Hey, what's up, everybody? Hope that you had a blessed day, a great 4th of July. So we're coming live. Wanted to talk on this subject. I reread the Declaration of Independence. It's been forever since I've looked at it. And I think we all know the first part, which talks about that all men are created equal. But the last sentence before they signed it was really struck me because it says this. It says, "And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor." So you can just see when they signed that thing, they understood what they were giving up, and they sacrificed a lot for our freedoms that we celebrated yesterday on the 4th of July. The Declaration of Independence was signed on that day. And doing some research found that there was 56 men that signed it. 5 of them were captured by the British. 12 had their homes destroyed. 2 lost their sons to the war. 2 had their sons captured. 9 of them died themselves. And so there was a price that was paid by our founding fathers. Not only did they sign a piece of paper saying that they were willing to give everything up, they did. 9 of them gave up their own lives. And so I was reflecting on this. I think I read it like Monday or Tuesday of this week. And later, I think Thursday, I went for a long run. And during that run, I was reminded of a sermon that I heard several years ago. It's from a man named Johnny Garrison. Now, this sermon is probably from 25 years ago, but he was a missionary to Africa. And he sold everything that he owned to go preach the gospel in Africa. And this sermon is when he comes back to the United States and he's preaching a message, and it's titled Selling Out. And he talked about his experiences and everything that he encountered while he was there preaching in Africa. He got malaria. He was very sick for a while, and people prayed for him and he recovered. And he's talking about all the things that they've encountered. He didn't have electricity for a while, and they didn't have running water. And he says they live out in the country. They have one vehicle. It's their hearse. It's their everything. But he tells this story of a 13-year-old girl. And it's tough to listen to. I was going to put a link for the sermon. And then I thought, I don't know if I want to do that because it's so harsh. But he tells the story of this 13-year-old girl. And she was attending their church, but her father was a juju priest. And so he didn't want her to go to their service. He didn't want her to attend the mission. And so he told her, he said, "You can't go back. You can't go back." But she kept attending anyways. And so one night when she made her way back home following a service, he was waiting on the porch for her. And he had a Honda motorcycle brake cable in his hand, hanging down by his leg. And he began to beat her. He beat her and beat her and beat her to the point that she collapsed on the ground, blood. Somehow she made her way back to the mission. And the missionary, Brother Garrison, said that when he went in his office and he saw that young girl, he didn't even have words to say. He didn't know what to say. When he looked and he saw the wounds that were on her body. And he said something in this message that I can't get out of my head. He said, "You're going to stand in judgment next to that girl." And when I ponder that statement, and I think about the fact of there are people who have been persecuted for the gospel of Jesus Christ, and I'm going to have to stand in judgment next to them, I can't help but ask myself the question, are we doing enough? Are we doing enough? I know we live in the United States of America. We have freedom of speech, freedom of religion. We haven't had to face persecution, and hopefully we won't have to in the future. But there's something when you think about the fact that there are people who have been willing to give up everything. They've been beat for this gospel. It's hard not to think, are we doing enough? Are we giving up enough? And I'll be honest, there's been times I've came on here on Facebook Live and I've hit the finish button, or the next day I've pondered what was said, and I'll even say, oh man, what is somebody going to think of me because of what I said? And somebody's going to criticize me for this or criticize me for that. And how weak is that when you compare that to the fact that there's been people who've taken wounds on their body for this thing? And I don't know, there's something that we got to go to the next level. We got to be willing to push past some things. It doesn't matter what people say. I did pretty good at keeping a clean image on social media. There's been times in my life where I've done some things and I've hid it because I didn't want anybody to know. And I was able to keep pictures off social media. I was able to kind of hide it. I'll even say it was almost living like a double life at times. You know, because I was afraid of what people may think about me. And people knew me from certain circumstances. But there's something that's saying, you know what, it doesn't matter what anybody says anymore. It doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. We're going to stand in judgment before God and nobody else. And you know what? We got to just ignore the fact and be all right with the fact that people may criticize you. And we got to be willing to give up our image sometimes and maybe give up our reputation to speak truth, to try to help people. And so we're going to have some videos that come out soon and it'll show a side that I didn't really show to anybody else. I'll tell you this. There's been a time in my life where I ended up abusing alcohol, drinking. You wouldn't find a picture on Facebook though. I could hide it. I figured out you just put it on your timeline. You got to approve everything, any photo that you're tagged in. But I end up abusing it. And you know what? I hid it for so long and said, I ain't going to talk about that. But you know, there comes a time that says, you know what? It's all right. I'm going to speak truth. I'm going to tell it exactly the way that it is. The things that God's helped me from and delivered me from. And I'm not here to talk about alcohol. I'm just saying I abused it. I did wrong with it. And so as we move forward, and there's just something that's stirring that says we got to do more. We got to do more to help people. We got to do more to try to reach people. So I leave that question with you. Are we doing enough? Are we doing enough to reach this world? Are we doing enough for what we believe in? Are we sacrificing enough? Are we paying the price when there's other people who are literally paying the price right now and being persecuted for the gospel of Jesus Christ? And we appreciate